What's going on, YouTube? I want to touch on a portion of this statement here at the 519 mark of StrangerThanFiction's video. It's a video response to him. And I think I should take my time with that because in this paragraph, there's a lot of things that are assumed here. So I just want to take things one at a time so things can be concise. If I have to make a part 2 or maybe a part 3, you guys who view this will let me know, and when I find the time I can do so. I found the time to make this particular video response, so here I go with it. He states Jesus was a Jew. He wasn't black, but the Israelites were black, and I'm gonna show that. The word Jew, I'm not sure if that's the way he's using it in terms of the modern aspect of it, like everybody who is from the tribe of Israel as a collective are considered Jews, or if he means Jew as in the tribe of Judah, which is where Jesus came from. But at that time, Jesus knew that he was from the tribe of Judah, just like Saul, which turned into the Apostle Paul, knew that he was from the tribe of Benjamin. So the tribes were, well understood at the time of Jesus, along with his disciples and apostles. But what I want to do is, one, we're all brothers and sisters here. I don't have a problem with anyone. The bottom line is, whether Jew or Greek or Gentile, whatever the case may be, being a Hebrew Israelite, being a Jew is not going to get you into the kingdom. If you're not following what Yahusha said, that is going to be your problem. At the same time, however, the scriptures, which I'm going to show, tells us that those who are in captivity will discover themselves. They will find out about themselves while in that very captivity. So, sit back, see what I present, and then anybody who needs a part 2 or part 3, because I'm not going to address all of these because I like to be, thorough in, my responses. So, and that would just be too long. I'm not going to do that. So let's just deal with the tribes and, who they were in terms of their appearance. And with that said, here's my video. So this is the first section of my response. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through material from historians, people who had firsthand accounts, people who are within the scholastic field. And these are the books that I'm going to be using, as well, of course, as the Apocrypha, the Bible. So I'm going to be going through The Negro in the New World by Harry Johnston, Memoirs of the Secret Service of John Mackey, On the Classification and Geographical Distribution of the Mammalia, and Sources of History in the Pentateuch. Now, Samuel C. Bartlett is the 8th president of Dartmouth College in the 1800s, the Ivy League Dartmouth College. Richard Owen is the man who coined the phrase dinosaur. This is actually a book that is centered around Darwinism, but there's some interesting things in here. This book is the newest book in terms of publication that I have here. And this was from Harry Johnston, but he has something very interesting in his own book. This is the second oldest book that I have. This is from John Mackey, his memoirs that was published by his son, Spring Mackey. This is the second edition that was printed in 1733. As you can see, it's the second edition. The first edition was printed in 1726. And of course, you have the Apocrypha. This is thousands of years old. I'm going to start one by one. We'll begin with John Mackey. This is a description of Daniel, Earl of Nottingham, Secretary of State of the Court of Great Britain. You would be able to read this. And then on the second page of this particular description, there's something very unique. It says that this man is a tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or a Jew. Now, Spain and Portugal used to be Iberia. We also know that Hebrews and Moors reigned for a little over 800 years in Spain. This information was documented in the late 1600s. This was also during the time, or really after the time, of Ferdinand and Isabella during the Spanish Inquisition. That's very important because, ironically, the Spanish Inquisition and the transatlantic slave trade overlap in time, beginning and end. It's very ironic. A lot of people who do their research will realize that a lot of these black Spaniards and black Portuguese were shipped off to Sao Tome in Angola in Africa. And about 20 years after their departure from Spain and Portugal, after the papal bull of the Pope, they were shipped all over the world through that transatlantic slave trade. But that's not the point right now. I just wanted to show this example from a historian, a scholar, who put this and penned this memoir together for the Highness Princess Sophia. And this was during the reign of King William, Queen Anne, and King George I. Let's go to the next book. This is from the 8th president of Dartmouth College, Samuel C. Bartlett. Let's see what he has to say. On page 118 of this book, History in the Pentateuch. The Pentateuch is the Torah. It's the book of Moses, if anybody doesn't know what the Pentateuch means. He says, in regard to the human race, as it has been shown abundantly and historically, 1, that each of the external differences often ceases to be characteristic. Thus, the black color is found not only in individuals, as the black Jews of Portugal, but in tribes, as the Bicaris on the Red Sea, whose hair and character are perfectly Semitic. Let's go to the next book. Now, this is the Darwinistic evolution book by Richard Owen, named On the Classification and Geographical Distribution of the Mammalia. Let's see what he has to say here. With reference to the characteristics of color, which are extreme, we have now opportunities of knowing how much that character is the result of the influence of climate, which, given the fact that this person is a evolutionist, we can see how in the 1800s he thought that climate played a major part in the color of someone, when today we know that this is melanization, pigmentation. But anyway, we know it more particularly by the most valuable mode of testing such influences, which we derive from the peculiarity of the Jewish race. For 1800 years, that race has been dispersed in different latitudes and climates, and they have preserved themselves distinct from intermixture with other races of mankind. There are some Jews still lingering in the valleys of the Jordan, having been oppressed by the successive conquerors of Syria for ages, a low race of people, and described by trustworthy travelers as being as black as any of the Ethiopian races. Now, this is very ironic given this Bible verse here.
Holy Bible, Amos chapter 9, verse 7. Are you not as the children of the Ethiopians to me, O children of Israel, says the Lord? Have I not taken Israel up out of the land of Egypt, and the Philistines from Kephtor, and the Arameans from Kir?
Now that you heard that, I'm going to go to the next source. The Negro in the New World, Harry Johnston. Let's see what he has to say. The Jews are composed of 3 or 4 separate racial elements. The Asiatic Negroid strain shows itself occasionally
in the curly hair, the long eye, and proportions of the skull. The Jewish hybrids with the Negro in Jamaica and Guinea reproduce most strikingly with the Assyrian type. It is quite conceivable that the great peninsula of Arabia was once populated as far as its natural conditions allowed by a primitive Negro stock, which may have been later on particularly exterminated by changing and unfavorable conditions of climate and by the aftercoming of white man in his types. We see that today, not in terms of climate, but people within that geographical location. On to the Apocrypha. Now I'm in the book of the Apocrypha, and I'm going to be in First Maccabees. Now, this is during the Macedonian era. After Alexander the Macedonian passed away, for those who don't know Alexander the Macedonian, that is Alexander the Great. Once his 4 generals had control of the area. Now, I just wanted to add some context because folks know in Greece, when Alexander and his generals ruled, they used something called Hellenization. So in other words, I'll use Egypt, for example. They would destroy the history there after they enslaved the people, took over the land. And then they would reinstitute their literature or replace the information that was there, such as the Library of Alexandria. And then they would place themselves in the books, and then place themselves, such as Alexander the Great being Pharaoh, and I believe Ptolemy as well, reigned over Egypt after Alexander the Great died. But just keep that in mind as we read this. Chapter 345, Now Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness. There was none of her children that went in or out. The sanctuary, also was trodden down. The aliens kept the stronghold. The heathen had their habitation in that place. And joy was taken from Jacob, and the pipe with the harp ceased. Wherefore the Israelites assembled themselves together and came to Mizpah over against Jerusalem. For in Mizpah was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. Listen. Then they fasted that day, and put on sackcloth, and cast ashes upon their heads, and rent their clothes, and laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their image, because this is what Hellenization was doing at that time, during the Macedonian period. This is one of the reasons why this book is even called the Hidden, or the Apocrypha. This is in between the so-called Old Testament and the so-called New Testament. I almost forgot about this. I wanted to touch quickly on something in Baruch. Given that we are living during the times now, everybody who knows that those who were scattered during the trans-Arabic and transatlantic slave trades, those black people, for the most part, are still living in the land where they were oppressed. So, for example, those who are living in Brazil, the Caribbean, United States, those descendants are still in those countries, right? I'm going to read this in Baruch really quick. There we go. As thou spakest by thy servant Moses in the day when thou didst command him to write the law before the children of Israel, saying, If ye will not hear my voice, surely this great multitude shall be turned into a small number among the nations, where I will scatter them. For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land, listen, but in the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves, and shall know that I am the Lord their God, for I will give them an heart and ears to hear. Now, folks are talking about the situation that's going on with these Hebrew Israelites. They're remembering themselves in the land of their captivities. This was the 400-year prophecy that Moses spoke about. Now, a lot of people who don't know the Bible say that 400 years happened in Egypt. Never mind the fact that when you read the Septuagint, it stated that it would be 400 years between that the Israelites will be in Egypt and Canaan. But even disregarding that fact, Moses gave the Israelites this prophecy after they left Egypt. So anybody who is saying that the 400 years they were a part of, they have to show it after Egypt. It has to be after that. You can't say that the 400 years going into Egypt in ships was the old documented one within the Bible, because Moses came and got them from that captivity and then gave them this prophecy, which is continued here. And now, while these black people are in captivity, they are remembering themselves. It is prophecy. That is what people are seeing, and people are being resistant to it. But you know what? This Apocrypha did not say. It didn't say that they and other nations shall remember them. It says that they shall remember themselves. And that is what's occurring here. But on to the online version.
So I'm going to look at the book of Acts, chapter 13, verse 1. This is the first missionary journey. Basically, this first verse is going to be talking about the builders of the first church that happened in Antioch, right? Now there were in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas and Simeon, that was called Niger, and Lucius of Cyrene, Manaen, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch, and Saul, which is Paul, right? Now, what I want to do is I want to concentrate on this word Niger here. The general consensus is that the New Testament was written in Greek, right? So, of course, the English is translated from the Greek. Now, what I want to do is I want to see what the transliteration is. Niger is Strong's G 3526, and this is the Greek word. Now, it's saying here that the transliteration is Niger, and this is the pronunciation. Now, I want to see how this word actually sounds in Greek, because a translation and a transliteration are not the same. You can translate a word into that language, but a transliteration is supposed to be consistent with the original sounding, the pronunciation of the word in its original language. So what does this word mean in Greek? Let's listen.
Strong's G 3526. Niger. Niger.
So as we can see, this does not say Niger. It says nigger. Nigger means black, and that was what the prophet Simeon was called. Now when we go back and we see that the very first Christian church that was built in Antioch was built by niggers. And this nigger was a prophet. And you had teachers, because they needed Saul to teach the word of the gospel. Prophets and teachers. Let's go on to the next. So now I'm at the website Safaria. Give me 1 second. Let me sip on my coffee. We're at the website Safaria, and you can see you can browse their library. It's basically a ton of literature, Jewish literature. It's a Jewish site ran by Jewish folk, you know. And what I'm going to do is we're going to go to the Midrash. And we're going to go through their renowned rabbi, Perkai, the Rabbi Eliezer. And this is the Midrash written by Mr. Eliezer. And we're going to go to chapter 24. Now, chapter 24 This is the blessings. Let me make this a little big. This is the blessings that I'm about to read that Noah placed on his sons. Noah brought his sons and his grandsons, and he blessed them with their several settlements, and he gave them as an inheritance all the earth. He especially blessed Shem and his sons, making them dark but comely, and he gave them the inhabitable earth. He blessed Ham and his sons, making them dark like a raven, and he gave them as an inheritance to the coast of the sea. He blessed Japheth and his sons, making them entirely white, and he gave them for an inheritance to the desert and its fields. These are the inheritances with which he endowed them. Now, we have the Hebrew right above. This is just the English translation. So what I'm going to do is I want to see what dark means in Hebrew. And this is the word here. Now we're at translate.google.com. Now we want to just have them detect the language, and then it will give us the English. This is the word, and it means blacks. So from this here, we can see that it wasn't a curse. This was part of Noah's blessing. And the blessing that was stated by Rabbi Eliezer was that both Shem and Ham were blessed as being black. And Japheth was blessed as being white. These, our complexions, our pigmentation, these are not curses. People teach this nonsense, but it's just that. But furthermore, we can see from Mr. Eliezer's own writings how situations where Joseph, after his brothers sold him into slavery, and later on, during the famine, his brothers could not recognize him when he was then vizier or governor in Egypt because he had on the Egyptian garment and they couldn't tell who he was because he just looked like an Egyptian. Or how when Joseph and Mary were told by the angel to take Jesus and flee into Egypt because King Herod had put out this decree to kill all of the young boys 2 years old and younger. After the kings went to go see Christ, after they seen the star in the sky, why it was chosen for them to go into Egypt. Because as you can see, Shem and Ham, in terms of complexion, look the same. This also goes to show when Jacob, when he died, and his sons went to bury him, both Egyptians and the Israelites went to bury him, and afar off were the Canaanites. And the Canaanites viewed this and didn't realize that it was both Hebrews and Egyptians. They just thought it was Egyptians. This is why when the Romans arrested Paul, because there was a big scuffle when he was trying to talk to the Israelites, and they were trying to kill him because they thought that he, being a former Pharisee, was going against the law by teaching the gospel. And the Roman soldier, given the situation, clearly thought that he could not have been an Israelite, given the fact that the Israelites were trying to kill him. He immediately assumed that Paul was Egyptian. And then Paul had to correct him and say, no, I'm not Egyptian. I'm an Israelite from the tribe of Benjamin. Now you know why. Again, this is Jewish sources. I'll continue. So now we're at the home page. We're going to go into the Talmud and see what the Sanhedrin has to say. So we're in chapter 11, section 94a. Now remember, we have Israelites in Africa saying that they're not lost, they're scattered, right? So when you have people like the Igbo tribes and other tribes, Lemba tribe, and they're telling you about their history, nobody listens to this. So maybe they'll listen to the Talmud. All right, so the Gemara asks, to where did Sennacherib exile the 10 tribes? Sennacherib was the king of Assyria, right? Mars Sutra says he exiled them to Africa. And Rabbi Hanina says to the Salug Mountains. So they were exiled to Africa, the 10 tribes. Now you have to remember, you have folks who are saying that they're Judah, or the house of Judah, because there were two kingdoms. You had the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. You had 10 tribes in one, and you had 3 in another. Now that sounds like 13 until you realize that the Levitical priesthood didn't have land. They lived amongst both kingdoms because they were the priests. They had to do the job of a priest to everyone within the land. So under the kingdom of Judah, you had Benjamin, and you had Levitical priests. The 10 tribes that were taken over at first, and then later on, when Sennacherib was defeated by the angel, the 10 tribes were already out of their land, and they were banished into Africa. Now you have people in Africa saying that they were not lost. They're simply scattered. They're not in their land, but they know who they are. Now, let's see if we can find something to support that. What I'm going to do is we're going to stay on Safari's website. The letter to the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Now, this is a letter sent by the elders and rabbis of the Ashkenazi community in the land of Israel, right? But they're also with people. Now let's find out. Accept abundant greetings from your brethren, the children of Israel, the last remnant of the tribes of Judah, Benjamin and Levi. This is the house of Judah, dispersed among the 4 corners of the earth. This was sent in the 1800s. This is a letter written to the 10 tribes that are beyond the rivers of Cush, which this letter actually states, if I can find it. Here we go. Who sits upon a mighty throne and who rules over the 10 tribes, whose settlement is in the land of beyond the rivers of Nubia or Cush, who camp according to their banners, the tribe of Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, the tribe of Issachar, who understand the movements of the celestial bodies. Their brothers from the kingdom of Judah are writing them, but continuing, dispersed among the 4 corners of the earth, meaning them, and, meaning in addition to, from your brethren in the land, currently in the land of Israel, from the diaspora of the land of Ashkenaz, who out of their burning desire for the Holy Land, the land adored by the higher and lower, land of Israel, holiest of lands, put their lives on the line and have left their home. They left their home, countries, and families to go to the land of Israel and have traversed seas and deserts until reaching our holy city, Jerusalem, and the burial place of our fathers that is in Hebron, and to the holy city of changed name, Tisfat, they attach themselves to the plot of Hashem and rolling into its dust, who sit in the tents of the houses of study of Torah and divine worship. Now, let me ask you a question. Didn't Genesis say that Japhet will dwell in the tents or in the land of Shem?
God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant.
This is a letter written to the 10 lost tribes of Israel from the house of Judah, accompanying the rabbis of the Ashkenazi community. And in the letter, it's telling you where they came from. This is a Jewish site. This is not quote unquote Black Hebrew Israelite. This is their documentation. We're reading it, right? Let's continue though. Now I'm on to the next person. This is Dr. Stephen Pidgeon. He's the founder, president, and chief executive officer of Sefer Publishing Group. Sefer, as in the Sefer Bible, one of the most popular Bibles on earth. Let's see what he has to say.
Hitler was, and the Nazis, of course, expanded on Margaret Sanger's approach to eugenics, right? Eugenics was a movement that was born in the United States under hard doctrines of racism with the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them. That's why she formed Planned Parenthood.
I'm like, put it out. And he's telling me like, yo, I want you to visit the Holocaust Museum. And I was like, yo, I want you to visit Planned Parenthood. That's our Holocaust Museum.
With the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them. That's why she formed Planned Parenthood, was specifically to kill African-American, Black Americans. That's why she did it.
Now let's sit here and listen to Brother Harry Rosenberg and see what he has to say in terms of his understanding of the 10 tribes and what has been discovered by the Jewish communities.
And I'd like to now bring up another interesting place that you're finding descendants of the Israelites, but may not necessarily be from the 10 tribes, but will also play a role. And it shouldn't be overlooked. It's a very serious scenario. Is in Africa. Africa has perhaps hundreds of millions of people with this identity right now of being from the people of Israel. Does that mean they were from the 10 tribes? Likely not. We were taught by the historians and within our own traditions that when the Romans conquered Judea, a few hundred years after that the tribes of Israel went into exile, perhaps millions of Judeans were sold into slavery, into Africa, into Rome, deep into Africa. And if you look now, you're seeing people who are most likely the descendants of those slaves who kept true. I'd like to bring up a few specific examples because they're going to be game changers. One of them wrote letters to Israel when it became a state. And they said, we're Israelites out in Africa. Everyone laughed at them and they said, African Israelites, these people are just trying to jump on the first world country bandwagon. They're living in a third world country. They got nothing. We're coming to Israel. We got innovation, technology. So they're trying to get on this train because there's such a thing called the right of return. All descendants of the Jewish people from around the world are able to move to Israel. So they said we are also. And everyone kind of laughed at them, like I said. And a few people took it serious and went out there and started studying them, learned about their culture. And a professor from Duke University went out there and did DNA testing on them. And he showed not only do they share Semitic genes from people who were in Yemen and back to the Middle East, these gentlemen, a large percent of them, have the Y chromosome to be Kohanim, to be priests. Now, if anyone who doesn't know, a priest is a specific family clan of the nation of Israel, who come from Aaron, the brother of Moses, who was the first priest. And anyone descended from Aaron has the status title priest. And we found that these men in this village in South Africa called Lemba, L-E-M-B-A, carry this genetic marker to let us know that they share the same as from the Sephardic and the Ashkenaz and the population of the people in Israel today. They share the same exact DNA marker. That's mind-blowing. So everyone kind of got humbled a little bit, who laughed at them and said, now what? Now what do we do about this? This could have tremendous implications. Another area in Africa you have something big happening is in Nigeria. You have the Igbo people, or Igbo, pronounced either way. There's 40 million of them, also Christians, like I spoke about before, how that could happen to the children of Israel very easily. But also a lot of them are now coming out and converting back or adopting the rules of the Torah without all the paganism that they've been practicing for hundreds of years. There's been books written about it from scholars in Nigeria, from scholars from the Jewish people. And where it gets interesting is, in America, there was a slave trade. And a lot of the slaves, a very high percentage of them, came from Western Nigerian ports. And in America today, you see a very large movement of African Americans who say that they're the real chosen people, that they're the children of Israel, they're the Judeans. So what are they just trying to create an identity for themselves because they were slaves, or is there really something here? And the answer is, most likely there is something there. And most likely, maybe that they were the original Israelites, and maybe that the Jewish people today who are white, Caucasian people came in a little bit later on. We know that some of the greatest sages of the transmission of the Torah were converts from Rome. You have a man named Onkelos who wrote a commentary on the Torah, unprecedented, that we still learn today. He was a convert. Some of the largest pillars on the transmission today were Roman converts. So here we are, we're Caucasian Jewish people, and now you have people in Africa saying that they're the real people of Israel. It can't be ruled out at all. We know they were sold into slavery. We know now that they're fulfilling prophecies by saying, we're coming back.
Now, this video speaks about the Lemba Jews of Zimbabwe. It was discovered that these Israelites in Zimbabwe were actually genetically Levitical priests from the tribe of Aaron. Aaron is the brother of Moses. Listen to this.
This evening is a very remarkable occasion. For most of you, it'll probably be the first time you met a Lemba Jew and been introduced to the Lemba community. Before I introduce Modric Meosera, I think I need to introduce Lemba Jews. Many, in fact, based on my last conversations, most of you have heard about that there's a African tribe with the Cohen gene. And it's true. The men of the Lemba tribe in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique do in fact have the Cohen modal haplotype in the same proportion as Jews around the world. For those of you not familiar with the Cohen modal haplotype, geneticists have found a certain marker on the Y chromosome called the haplotype that is found in approximately 50% of the self-identified Kohanim, both Ashkenazi and Mizrahim, about 15% in the Leviim, and 2 to 6% in the rest of the Jews. In non-Jewish populations, the haplotype is non-existent or less than 1%. Among the 12 Lemba clans, the Buba clan has more than 53%, with the rest of the Lemba having somewhere between 2 and 9%.
So there you have it. This is my video response in regards to the appearance, how the tribes looked. Now, if anybody wants me to do a video response in regards to their status in terms of the land of Israel and what the Bible says about that, then I can do that as well, because there's things that are said here, and I just want to show what the Bible, like literally going into the Bible, showing the scripture, so people can have a clearer understanding, so it's no back and forth, he say, she say. What does the Bible say? And anything that is secular that disagrees with that is immediately false, because the source is the Bible. So anything that is going to support what the Bible says has to be consistent with the Bible, right? As well as the rest of this information here, So anybody who's interested, or if Stranger Things, a Stranger Than Fiction, would like me to do, a video response to that as well, I have no problem. Again, man, I don't know who you are, but you family to me, and that's the way I treat people. At the end of the day, we were told that we would discover who we are while we're in the land of our captivity, and that's what's happening. This is what people are seeing. And people can deny that. That's not our prerogative. We're at a stage right now where we just don't need approval from anyone. Everybody can sit there and read, and people can view the world through the lens of the Bible and see what it is. So, until next video.